Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Greenberg, and welcome to Talking Headless. This is the 13th episode. And once again, being a mercurial sort of person, I have changed the format. Uh, if you remember, it originally started out as an audio podcast. I analyzed a company, and then I did something I really like and dislike as a segment. Then I went and live streamed that. Well, in thinking about it, I realized, yeah, I'm an analyst or have been an analyst, although it took me years to actually admit it. But there's also the other side of being an analyst, which is analyst relations. And I decided to make this show not only about me and analysts and talking about companies as an analyst, but also talking about analyst relations uh, and with analyst relations professionals too. And I decided to kick it off with literally one of the best I know, and that's Robin Schaffer. I mean, I have known Robin since probably 2005, maybe when she was at Nice. And she's amazing. She's written a book with two editions now, which is Analysts on Analyst Relations. It's really two books, but technically one follows the other. But honestly, they're so distinctly different that you can call it two separate books. And they're really good. And she solicited a lot of analyst opinions, including mine in the second edition. And her own thinking on this has been just paramount. I mean, she's well known across the industry by the analysts themselves and by AR teams. She also, by the way, is well regarded, well respected, and well liked as a human being as well as an expert in her field. So, what more can I say? I'm going to just remove this static image and bring on the real deal. Hi, Robin.
I feel like the real deal. I also feel like I got to ask my mother how much she paid you for that intro. That was pretty amazing. Thank you.
I promise you, your mother paid me absolutely nothing. I swear. I will sign an affidavit stating the fact. It's all true. Look, I mean, you're to me one of the people that you're like what I would say if I had to pick a go-to person trying to figure out. I don't need to figure out the mind of an analyst. I'm afraid to actually look into the mind of me or someone else when it comes to analysts, for that matter. But I do need to figure out analyst relations people because over time you're developing these kind of inner active relationships with AR people as analysts, and friendships develop sometimes, and sometimes just analyst AR people like to talk about cadence, which I hate as a term, but I get the idea. They establish a routine with analysts, and it depends on how much they feel the analyst influences their market and or their customers, so on and so forth. And it's really kind of a complex world. So let me ask you straight out. If I'm an analyst or a person who is coming into analyst relations, and I'm trying to figure out just the basic thing you got to do to start to talk to analysts. And also, by the way, since we're a testy lot of sometimes very arrogant people, how you get through to analysts, what do you do? I mean, how's that work?
Yeah, I think I get myself in that wonderful mind of an analyst and try to position what I'm trying to do in their best interests, right? So analysts are frankly studying a market, doing research, getting to know vendors, getting to know customers, and becoming experts. So what can I do, first of all, to support that expertise, grow that expertise? What can I bring them? What can I give them? Because if I offer something of value to an analyst, they're much more likely to give me some time. Nobody wants to be talked at. Nobody wants to be positioned. Nobody wants to be influenced. And I work really hard not to try to do that with analysts, but see them for people that are trying to get things done.
Okay, but here's the deal. So, every analyst is individual, and
Yep.
all of us, it would be fair to say, have some sort of ego. Um, Now we can take it different ways. We can be honored that somebody gives a crap about our opinions at all, or we can be completely arrogant about it, thinking you better listen to my opinion. I'm right, right? Or it should ultimately, but common word there is opinion, right? That said, analysts are sometimes gateways for amplification. They can
Yes.
or help a company fairly dramatically. They can impact an entire market at times. They can be like, say, a Gartner, where I can't even imagine the number of customer reference calls they get. Where customers are saying, "Who should I think about?" So Magic Quadrants, Waves, etc., Market Watches, all of these things are there. So you're an AR person, and you're afraid even to say something to an analyst because what if you get them mad at you?
Ah,
How do you handle that?
oh, yeah. That's I think analyst relations has a lot of basic relationship development. And I don't mean friends becoming friends or sending them wine or doing this, but understanding how to talk to them and how to disagree with them and how to have a valuable conversation, because that's ultimately what what these guys are looking for. They're looking for new things to cover, new people to talk to, and I can work. If there's an ego, I find actually most analysts don't have big egos. Maybe they have them, but they don't parade them.
Right.
And we can have these really good conversations. So I just take it back to the human being and how to relate to this human being and open them up and chip away at some walls that they might have up and figure out how to reach them as an individual and not look at it as a block of people, but as different people that I'm trying to work with.
All right. So you figure that out. You're an AR person. You figure that out. You work for company A, who has 35 AR people and a big budget, or you work for company B, which has 5 AR people, a smaller budget, still a $1 billion company maybe, and maybe you are the head of that group, or you're a superstar, but everybody else is not. Or you work for a little company which has no budget, doesn't really understand AR all that well, other than that they should probably talk to analysts, and you're one person.
Yeah.
So yet your market has, I don't know, 150, 200 analysts associated with it. How do you handle all of the time, the budgeting? What do you do when you're under budgeted, you're underappreciated as a segment at your own company, and at the same time, or as a department at your own company, and at the same time, you've got a lot of analysts you have to deal with?
Well, I think it goes back. The thing I start with the clients I work with every company, is really deeply understanding their business priorities. What do they have to do as a business? Forget analysts, forget analyst relations, forget that whole thing, and just focus on where this company needs to do in the next 12 to 18 months. Take that list. Now, not all of them can be impacted at all by analysts. Which ones can you impact by an analyst relationship? And then once you define 3, 4 that you're going to really work on, then look at who the analysts are that can help you move those needles. It might be somebody that's very influential with clients, right? It may be somebody who's just super smart and knows the market and can give you insight. It might be somebody who has a big microphone and can get you brand awareness. It really depends on what you're trying to do. So you look at those 150 analysts, and it is not a science, it's an art. And it happens over time as you get to know them and you engage with them and you engage with your customers to understand who's, relating to the customers, to really, what I usually do is when I have a new client, we do a sweep and we grab every analyst that has either written about their space at all or listed in their coverage, because we have a database of all analysts and is relevant, or some keywords or some relevant ideas that this analyst talks about. So I have a big pile, a big list, 150 analysts, as you said. And then we look at that data, we look at the reports, we look at the coverage, we look at frankly, brand names like Gartner and Forrester and IDC are going to get more attention, and they're more influential just because more people know about them. But then, boutique firms can be very, very powerful if you're in an industry and you talk to customers and you find out who are the movers and shakers in the industry. And you try to pare that list down to maybe 7 or 8 that you're going to give all the love to. And that list is dynamic. And I tell that all the time. And it's going to change a lot in the beginning of a relationship because you're frankly freaking guessing. There is no, magic wand or crystal ball or anything that's going to tell you who's going to drive those business objectives. You're taking your best guess at it, and you start to engage, and you start to talk, and you start to understand. And not only do you talk to the analysts, you talk to partners, you talk to customers, you talk to salespeople, you get a good view of the dynamics going on in your industry, and you continue to refine that list and take people off if they're not interested in you. It's like a dating game, or they're not helping you. And you put analysts on that are more relevant, and you change it. And sometimes you move it because maybe an analyst who might be on the tier 2 list is suddenly doing a relevant report. And then for that quarter, they're getting all the love. So it's a little bit dynamic that way. But by doing that, you focus your resources of your business, because you only have so much, frankly, every business is only going to put so much time and effort into briefing these analysts. And you've got to be really careful with executive and subject matter expert time to do a quality job with these briefings and these inquiries.
All right. So you mentioned in that conversation just now, you mentioned tier 2. Okay. So there's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I don't know. There may be a tier 4 somewhere. I have no idea. I've been tier 1 most of the time, but I've been tier 3 sometimes, and tier 2,
Mm-hmm.
I imagine. Oh, that's kind of the hazy one. I'm not really sure what the difference between 1 and 3. I know the difference. I don't know what 2 is exactly.
Yeah.
But can you talk about the tier system? And
Sure.
also, let me ask you this. Are you an advocate of that? And is there an alternate way of thinking about it beyond tier 1, 2, and 3?
Boy, maybe within the tier 1, 2, and 3, I do incorporate a lot of thoughts of other ways to look at it. But basically, to me, it's how you're paying attention and how you're supporting them. And the difference for me is I'm going to be really hard and tight on tier 1s. And those individual names, and that's not firms, by the way. It doesn't mean Gartner's tier 1 and somebody else is tier 2, and because of the firm they work at. Absolutely not. It's the individual. It comes down to an individual. Gartner has maybe 3 people that are relevant to you, and then a bunch more that are somewhat relevant, and then 2,400 that are completely irrelevant. So it's about the individual. And you want to identify, what tiers they fall into, so you can pay attention to them this way. So tier 1 gets proactive briefings and a proactive relationship where you're trying to have, at a minimum, once a quarter, hopefully more, an engagement with them, a good engagement with them, a briefing, an inquiry, an update, an email exchange, a LinkedIn connection, something that you're staying top of mind with them as much as you can. Tier 2 and 3, you do more in a one-to-many place through newsletters and webcasts and, large briefings where you're getting your name out there to those analysts, you're getting your message out there to them, and you're doing it in a very efficient way. The way I distinguish 2 and tier 3 is if a tier 2 analyst gets this, newsletter or gets this briefing and pops up and says that I'm interested in this, I'm more likely to, spend the time and consider them if they're going to be on tier 1. Maybe I made a mistake and a tier 3 person does too, but my idea is I want to get to the place where tier 2, I will respond with time and energy and send them information or give them time with a briefing. And tier 3, I try to avoid it And then only because my time is so limited, my spokesperson and my, my people at the account, my companies, time is limited. I want them to focus where we're going to move the needle. And maybe these people, when I look at those business objectives and I ask, what is this analyst going to do for me? If we do a bang up job, I don't get a good, value prop. I don't see a good value proposition out of that. So I'm going to try to minimize my time that I spend with them.
So does a tier 3 analyst, for example, get invited to a virtual analyst call?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But they don't get their expenses paid to a analyst summit or a conference where there's
you'd probably, you have a budget and you want those tier 1 people there and you work really hard to get them there. And then tier 2, you really look at who you want to invite. But the reason that they've landed on tier 3, and again, you made a mistake, but the real reason is because they're interesting. They, you want them to be informed. They may cover you, they may write about you, but they're not going to move any of those business priorities.
All right. So, okay, I'm as an analyst over the years, of course, I've dealt with just hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of companies, one way or the other, in some capacity. So, sometimes they're trying to reach out to me, they want to talk to me about something. Other times I'm reaching out to them because I saw something about them that interested me. Another time, I just have ongoing relationships running over years and years with them. But I do know that, especially when they're trying to reach out to me, I run into a lot of people who, let's say, they blow me away at how badly they're trying to get to me. I mean, not how much they're trying, but how poorly they're thinking this through. And so, for example, there seems to be a fair amount of PR people who are being confused as AR people. And they really are PR people. I mean, I'm not saying that's not a denigration of them. It's that's what they do, but they're being asked to pick up the role as if it's the same thing.
Right.
And I'll get when I wrote for ZDNet, which was until 2021, for 12 years, I would get emails all the time from AR people, PR people who didn't know I was an analyst, who thought I was a journalist, or an AR person who was still treating me as a journalist. And they would say, and they would even send things like, would you like to talk to an analyst about this? And it would be the area that I'm in. Right? And I'm thinking, well, if I want to talk to that person, they're actually like, I'll call them. I know them, right? I've known them for 10 years. And that's kind of the area I'm in. Meaning, and all they had to do to find out that I was an analyst in that area is look at my ZDR profile, which is literally on the page. You have to find me, period. And they didn't. And then every now and then I would get an email that would say, hey, Paul, how about those Yankees? And then go into some rote brief. But you know what? I typically would respond to them because at least they tried, right? They'd fail, but they tried. And I would say, hey, look, I know you at least read something that tells you I was a Yankees fan, and I appreciate the fact you tried to find something out about me, which I did. And, but then I would get things which would, like, I won't mention the name, but a company for years I couldn't stand it. Basically said, hi, I'm so-and-so. We're the PR firm for this company. This company is going to replace analysts because analysts basically are paid for and incompetent. And it was literally almost those words. And I basically sent him a note back saying, hey, stop the campaign because you just added a name there and you're literally libelous. Right. And this is a company that did that in their early days. It's a company you would know if I said it. I'll leave them out now just because I feel like leaving them out, not because I'm afraid to mention their name. I've been publicly vocal about this. But how do you deal with that kind of stuff where the analysts are just being effectively put off because PR people are trying to reach them as opposed to AR people.
Yeah. I look at it as I've had, when I've worked for companies, I've worked with my PR people, and we've made a large list of journalists, analysts, and influencers, right? And basically, they have the journalists, I have the analysts, and then we have these middle people that might fall into one or the other. And the distinction that we make is, how do they need to be treated? Do they need to, should we treat them more transactionally, meaning we have a story, we have something they can write about, or should we treat them more like we need a relationship? That this is something that we're not getting any immediate outcome out of. We're not trying to get an immediate outcome. We're trying to build a long-term, and it's a two-way. Journalists are one way. You just tell them about you give them briefings. Analysts are, and all analysts love this, the two-way, the giving you insights and providing that dialogue. And we look at, how do these people need to be treated? And if you treat an analyst as a transaction, if you come to an analyst with a transactional approach, it's not going to work, because analysts are in there to understand more and for a more long-term perspective, and not, pitch me and I'll write you something.
All right.
So I think it takes careful planning.
So let's go to Alan's question. So where should AR sit? Comms, marketing, product, somewhere else? Where?
Yeah. I feel really strongly that if people really understand the role, they'll put it in product, because product is where the analysts can influence the business the most, and where you need the people engaged that are going to add value to that conversation are in product. When it gets lumped into communications, it loses something, I think. And that's, I think, commonly where it is. That's where I see it most often. And I think it tends to get a little more tactical, a little less strategic. So I always,
that's actually, I'll tell you honestly, that's an unusual perspective. I've never heard that one with product. Typically it's in marketing somewhere, or it's really in corporate communications. I mean, that's where I see it.
Yeah,
pretty much.
But if it's in product marketing, that sits under marketing, that's beautiful. That's perfect, because your product marketing people are the people that need to hear from the analysts.
All right. So look at Jesus's comments. This is the first one. We need more of a relationship versus, I see there's more PR and communications. And he says here, vendors don't even have AR or influencers in LATAM often enough. Why would they not be considering that in a region or any region? I don't even understand what a vendor might be thinking to not have AR in an important region.
Yeah, I think what you'll find is that the analysts can be thin out there in the regions in terms of their focus. So you get an analyst, so you kind of have where an analyst sits. You might have a global analyst that sits in LATAM, but what you really want are analysts that know that region, understand the dynamics of that ecosystem, and can help you with your objectives in that region. And they tend to be thin. It tends to be hard to find those people that focus. And then people like me that are global, they get lost. It's hard to find them unless you're really looking for them.
All right. So let me go a different direction here. I'm asking you, as an analyst here, who is obviously always engaging with AR in some way. So here, two examples. I met you maybe 2005 at NICE, roughly. I talked to you till you left NICE, which was 2008. I haven't talked to a single other person at NICE since you left.
Crazy.
All right. Well, you know what? I don't sweat things like that if they don't want.
Well, you know why I say it's crazy? Because NICE wasn't really in customer experience when I was talking to you. It was more adjacent, but they've made moves into that.
No. Well, and the irony, if you want to look at their direct competitor, which is Verint, I have a very close relationship to Verint, right? Now, that's one example. Another example, and I think I know the answer to this. SAP, all right? I was SAP's, not only an analyst with SAP, going to conferences. I was part of their business influencer program, which was under Malcolm Kimberlin at the time. because SAP, and I'm going to get to this sort of two parts here. So SAP, then the program went away, and my relationship to the company went to complete crap, right? And right now, I don't care about them. Well, I mean, I'm very biased negatively to them at the moment because they've broken 100 promises. I mean, just all kinds of horrible things. But what's interesting in both cases is you were an individual. You went, I lost my relationship. SAP, it was an individual with a program. He went, my relationship went to hell. Obviously, there's something there about individuals,
Right.
and how that relates. So can you give an AR team, let's assume a team, a perspective on what to do when people leave who had relationships to specific analysts? What should they really be doing as opposed to what most of them do, which is, no, I shouldn't say that. That's not a fair statement. Some of
Yeah.
them do, which is let it go.
Well, I would hope, and I've not been on big analyst relations teams, so I want to speak for that.
Right.
I've worked in mid-sized companies,
Right.
and now as an independent, I've worked in some larger ones. But I would hope that people see relationships as an asset for the business. This is not an asset for an individual, it's an asset for the business, and look at it more broadly. And I can't imagine being in a space where an individual owns a relationship so tightly that it leaves with them. That's a little crazy and short-sighted. I
Well,
wouldn't.
not infrequent, unfortunately.
That's amazing. Yeah.
All right.
Is it more frequent with larger teams than smaller teams? I would
Well,
think.
yeah. I mean, typically with a small team, though, if an individual leaves, the whole program goes to hell,
Yeah, it's
right?
true.
So that's the problem. Typically, the individual is the glue to the program.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a one-person show, you're hiring again, as opposed to hiring as the
And building
program
those
continues. You're
building
starting
those
over.
relationships again. That's
Yeah,
such
it's
a
rough.
loss.
It's rough.
Such a loss.
And the big companies, look, if I'm choosing the two big companies I think have in my universe that have the best relationships, the best programs, it would be Salesforce and ServiceNow without any question.
Oh,
To
interesting.
me, it's not even close.
Cool.
Beyond
Cool.
it. But on the other hand, I can point to individuals within a lot of companies that are really great. It's just the program too isn't necessarily supportive, and that goes to the area of the program itself too.
Right.
So here's the thing. As an independent analyst, I look at the world. When people ask me about it, I say, look, there are basically broadly three types of analysts. There's the institutional analysts who are Gartner, Forrester, IDC analysts. There are the boutique firms like Constellation or Ventana, companies like that, and then independents like me or Jesus or Alan, people like that who are independent analysts. And all three of them have different purposes, or have different, let's call it, strengths.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to beat the institutional guys when it comes to customer calls to them. Nobody. And Gartner will beat everybody when it boils down to it. The boutique firms are kind of the in-between, where there's some people who can operatively be independent, like a Ray or a Liz Miller or somebody like that, Ray Wangel, Liz Miller. But they also are strong in market research too, which a lot of them do. It doesn't mean that others don't, but that's a power of theirs. That's particularly, let's say, market research that you can actually afford, and it's actually genuinely good market research. And that's another benefit of the midsize. And then the independents, we don't impact customers as much as we impact markets, but we do impact markets. And, at least in my thinking, it's easier to deal with an independent because they're willing to do things for free that the Gartner and Forrester and IDC analysts just are not allowed to. It's not that they wouldn't. They're just literally not allowed to because, utilization is like what keeps them with a job, right? So, and again, I'm not trying to be unfair to them. They're great analysts who will do it, but half the time it's like on the sly, So what we're under no constraints. How do you view that world? Because a lot of these companies still don't care about anything but the waves and the magic quadrants, and they'll only deal with Gartner, Forrester, IDC, and which makes no sense to me in the world we're in.
It makes no sense to me, and it's such a loss. And I have this one great example. I worked for a company that had a business performance management division. They had this one part of their product that did that. They had acquired somebody that did that. There was one guy that owned that market. He was a single guy, or maybe he had somebody working for him. And it's a small market, but he was the expert in the space of business performance management. Like you're an expert in customer experience related solutions. He was an expert in that. And there was not a deal that went on. He was in the US and based in the and deals in the US that he didn't know about. So he was super influential with customers, but you would never know he existed unless you dug around for him to find this analyst. So I think that it's a real loss. And what we try to do is look at who's writing, who's influential in the space, and not go and automatically go to the top clients, because our clients can get a ton of value. That guy offered so much value to the vendors. It was amazing. And we did great work with him. So I'm sometimes talking clients off a ledge who are going to give a big paycheck because they think if they pay a big company, they're going to suddenly get covered or get some good things happening. And it certainly doesn't work that way, as you know. No. And try to get them, let's find a tier 2, let's find a boutique firm or an independent that can give you the value. Going back to your business priorities, what are you trying to do and how can they help you? And look through the whole market. I think there's 1,200 analyst firms out there and about 7,000 or 8,000 individual analysts. There's a lot of people out there.
Yeah. Well, the other example of story like that was David Rabb before he developed the CDP market, right? Before he created it. That guy was in everything. He was the foremost guy in marketing, and his name wouldn't even come up half the time. Yet he was so powerful. He was so smart. He knew everything. His advice was priceless.
Yeah.
And he was a real power. Luckily, not luckily, I mean, it's his achievement is he created the concept of a CDP, and then he created the market around it, and then he created the CDP Institute, and now everybody knows him, right? Okay. To his great credit. He is a wonderful guy, and he is really, really one of the smartest analysts I've ever known, and never until then got the recognition he was due. All right. Got one final question, and then we're going to move on to the most important thing you've ever told people about yourself. Now, okay. First of all, tell your favorite actual story about an AR analyst relationship of any kind, any place. And if you're open to it, it could be very positive. Name names.
Okay, so a relationship with an AR person and an analyst?
Yeah, like just a story about a relationship between an AR person and an analyst. Like they're the best friends, whatever. Or the impact an AR person had on an analyst as opposed to the other way around. Whatever. Wow. Just a favorite story.
So my least favorite story, I'll start with that, is somebody who bragged about at an event about having 5 analysts at their wedding. Yeah. That's not what Analyst Relations is about. And then one organization that said, unless you can get an analyst on the phone at 3:00 in the afternoon on a Sunday, you're not doing your job.
Well, that's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. So there are some bad examples of analysts and.
Although I would tell you, I mean, I wouldn't brag about it, but at the same time, Salesforce has a very interesting perspective. John Tashik said, look, we're in business. You're an AR team, and he's got like a huge team, right? I mean, his is the largest in the industry, bar none. I think might be over 30 people. So he said, you're going to be talking to these guys all the time. Chances are pretty good you're going to become friends with some of them.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe he'll marry somebody someday. You never know. He said, whatever, it's human. You're a human being.
Yes.
No, it's no problem. He said, the
Yes.
only thing I ask of you is just when you're dealing with people, just please be cognizant of who you work for. Right. Beyond that, he said, whatever relationships you establish, you establish.
Right.
It's your business. It's personal. And you're happy. I'm not here to stop your personal growth or your
That's
personal
nice.
friendships or your social interactions. I'm here to do my job to make sure that we communicate who we are to them.
Yeah.
Which I expect you to do yours too. That's it.
That's really important
Yeah.
because
That's why this
it is a human relationship between the AR people and the analysts. I think one of my most valuable relationships was with somebody at Gartner who we ended up really jostling about concepts. Not me personally, but me and my team.
Right.
We ended up at different points of perception of the market and what the market needed, which negatively affected us in the MQ, which was important to the executives. So we worked, I worked a plan with my subject matter experts and my executives to say, we need to change this guy's perspective because analyst relations is a business of managing perspectives, right? So we can't just come and say and stand on our high horse and claim anything. We have to prove it. We have to have real data. We have to bring customers to the forefront and customer examples. And we have to have a conversation because a good analyst is going to give you a lot of respect for that. And you have those conversations, and the real success was a plan. It wasn't like one conversation changed this person's mind, but a series of inquiries, briefings, strategy session. Eventually, we became, really aligned, and that ended up changing the way he evaluated us in the report.
Perfect.
So I think that's, what great analyst relations is really doing.
Well, thank you, Robin. And thanks for all the help. There's a lot of people on the call who are looking or on the watching the show who are looking for advice. And some of the show, of course, will be available for others to watch and recorded. And also clips will go out on the show too. But we have one more part. It's now time for something I really. And Robin, we're going to start with something you really dislike. Tell us what that is.
It is. I want to talk about music. Music is a big issue, a big part of my life, and my husband's life. We're very involved in music. So I go to music, and one of the things I really dislike is electronic music.
Okay, rant away. Why?
I feel like it's not real. Like part of me wants a human being to make the music, and using electronics to make the music feels like a cop-out. And it's not satisfying to me to listen to music that's been done electronically. So I don't tend to really like the style of music, but I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking more about the process. It doesn't have the heart in it. It doesn't have the feeling in it that it does when it's authentic music.
So I
call it authentic music.
I assume you must hate Gen AI generated music.
I do.
I figured as much. All right. Well, fair enough. I mean, I can't say I've given electronic music as much thought as you have, but at the same time, at best, I think it's all right every now and then. I'm not a huge fan. It's probably one of my least favorite genres.
Really good in elevators. I have to give you that.
And I like it for background on some videos, maybe.
Yeah.
Although as Brent does in, when we do Stump the Godfather, he uses Benny Hill. So that works way better.
That's great.
All right, now let's go to something you really like. What music is it that you really
Yeah. So, I started with one thing I really like is singer-songwriter music. And that is the reason I like it is the contemporary singer-songwriter is really writing in depth about something, telling a story. And I like that storytelling aspect of it. And, marrying a theme with lyrics, with the music that goes with it, and creating an experience for a listener, I think is magical. And I'm really drawn in by songs that have a certain depth to them, like pop does not usually.
Okay.
And it really, you can kind of get into it and learn the story. And a lot of times you don't even know what it's about the first time you listen to it. You have to give it a couple listens. It's a little puzzling and you really get into it. So I like singer-songwriters.
Okay, so who's a singer-songwriter that you would want every one of us to know about?
Oh, there's somebody called Louise Mosry. Nobody's ever heard of her.
Okay, how do you spell Mosry?
Mosrie.
Okay.
Louise is, first of all, she's super talented. She's got a beautiful voice. She could read the phone book to me and I would enjoy it. But she writes songs never about herself, or small parts of her life. She is motivated very much by the newspaper. She talks about the newspaper and she finds stories about people, about experiences. And she writes these beautiful songs about them to bring those experiences to life. So I think everybody should know her.
All right. Well, Robin, also one final thing. How do people reach you if they want to talk to you about engaging you or get your book? I mean, what do they do?
Yeah, I'll just, my email is Robin@Schaffer AR.
Okay.
And I'm sure you'll put that in the notes. So we have the spelling right. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find me there. And I really love talking, as you probably could tell, I love talking about AR and I love the challenge. I love being challenged about, how can it work for me and how can we move the needle, in the business using this technique. And a lot of people don't understand it. And I just love those conversations. I'm willing to have them anytime.
I highly recommend to all of those of you who hear this at any point that you actually engage Robin. And that was my phone going off. All right. Well, with that, thank you, Robin.
A pleasure.
As always, it's awesome to see you. And I will be seeing you soon. And in the meantime, we're going to say goodbye and farewell, and we are done.
Nice.
Mashed up and broken into two. I didn't know I was pretty till I took a look at you and I'm rolling. Yeah, I'm still rolling. Baby, there ain't nothing I can lose and I sure got the blues. Hey!
This has been a Players Productions Network digital broadcast.